Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the sudden mini reshuffle of Rishi Sunak's cabinet as he appointed a new party chair at last and ordered a restructuring of some government departments. In theory, a good move, but in practice, it's going to draw quite a bit of criticism for being completely the wrong time. Oh, and the least said about promoting 30p Lee to the position of deputy chair, the better. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So there are a few points of interest here, really. The first is the timing of the reshuffle, which will attract two major criticisms for Sunak. Second is the idea of splitting energy from business, as used to be the case. And third is the belated appointment of a new Conservative Party chair, which might suggest Sunak has been scraping the bottom of the barrel somewhat. So first of all, Sunak has announced that he's separating energy and net zero into its own department, away from business, in isolation, a good move. Indeed, this used to be the case until they were combined by the Tories a few years ago. You know, and when energy is its own department, as it should be, and then you combine it with another one, you're basically saying you don't find energy policy that important. You know, Keir Starmer had effectively already penciled in the same thing because he appointed a separate shadow secretary for state for business and another for energy. So from a certain point of view, what this is a case of Sunak mirroring how the opposition are organising things, when it's usually the opposition which has to mirror the government organisations. But the idea of having energy as a separate department with a full cabinet minister to focus entirely on energy and net zero policy is, of course, a good one. So what's the complaint? Well, the problem with merging it, with other aspects of government policy. So you inevitably set up conflicts where the cabinet minister, if they've got to take charge of business and energy, and it's like, well, then there may have decisions about what to prioritise. And hands up who thinks that any Tory Secretary of State ever sides with energy or environmental needs over their business philosophy. No, me neither. So of course, energy, its own department, good decision. But two main problems with restructuring. The first is that Sunak has appointed Grant Shapps to the role of Secretary of State for Energy. Now, fair enough, he's rather more sane than some of his cabinet colleagues. There were definitely worse picks for the job. But he is opposed to some very obvious sources of renewable energy, including onshore wind farms. So don't expect him to actually spearhead any useful initiatives. Ed Davey of the Liberal Democrats said, Sunak needs to change energy policy, not just Whitehall machinery. But if he doesn't change policy, just the Whitehall machinery, then this is actually a terrible decision, because any reshuffle is itself disruptive. They have to happen from time to time, but they are disruptive because it means you've got a government department having to pause some of their work. They have to spend time getting the new ministers up to speed. They have to explain to the new minister what's been going on, what are the various projects underway, tell them about the progress reports. Then they need to check from that minister if they want to continue with certain projects, the work set in motion by their predecessor, or do you want to take a different direction? So there's quite a bit of time of, paralysis within that department immediately after the reshuffle. When politicians complain about inefficiencies in the civil service, this is what causes them. Projects stopped and started according to the whims and changes of the ministers in charge. And when you're changing ministers, particularly cabinet ministers, on a regular basis, and some cabinet positions have had like 5 or 6 different ministers in the last year, then yes, you're going to create a lot of paralysis in those government departments. But this isn't just appointing new ministers, it's making whole new departments. Just the idea of just splitting these into different departments isn't as straightforward as it sounds. It's not like moving a desk. It means staffing has to be restructured, as well as budgets. It will take time to set up. In the meantime, nothing's really going to get done. I've seen more than one person suggest that when the country is in such a state and Sunak's government is in such chaos, this really isn't the time to be getting government departments to down tools while restructuring goes on. Also, given how split the party are on environmental issues, I wouldn't be hopeful of this new department being a dynamo for net zero. Net zero is, I think it's still formal government policy because it is a manifesto promise, Not that that means anything, but the climate change deniers are a powerful and determined faction within the parliamentary party. So expect the department to carry on shilling for oil companies. For example, I seem to remember reading recently the government are going to put someone from Shell on the seat of their renewables advisory committee. Still, at least it means the departments will be set up better for when Labour come in. Saves them a job, so I should not be complaining really, should I? Also, lol at the prospect of Grant Shapps having to face off against Ed Miliband now. But the reshuffle has attracted another criticism as well. It's a very clear sign of support for Dominic Raab. See, Sunak's trying to claim that he didn't know about the allegations of bullying against Raab when he appointed him. Now, this has come under some scrutiny, but when you reshuffle cabinet, you're effectively reappointing everyone who isn't moved. It's all right calling it a mini reshuffle. It is. It's only so many places. And no one's really left cabinet apart from Nadhim Zahawi, who'd already left cabinet. But you are sort of saying with the people who remain in place, I'm happy with you doing that job. So questions will be asked about why Sunak didn't use the reshuffle to, well, shuffle Raab on, rather than string out another feeble attempt at due process, which, by the way, seems to change for each minister in need of the sack. You know, if Sunak is adopting due process, why is it being a different due process for all different cabinet ministers? Gavin Williamson was sacked without any investigation. Nadhim Zahawi was sacked after an ethics inquiry. Raab will be sacked after an independent inquiry from an employment lawyer. And Suella Braverman just faced no inquiry of any kind. I thought due process was at least supposed to be consistent, if not written down. But then on to the issue of appointing the party chair. Now, why did it take so long? And when it happened, why did it go to someone with so little gravitas within the party? You know, it seems Rishi Sunak struggles to fill cabinet positions now. Nothing on the scale of when Boris Johnson fell, of course. He couldn't find enough MPs to physically fill up ministerial positions at all, let alone get suitable appointments. You know, so he couldn't form a government. But it's generally the case that, so when a minister, like a particular cabinet minister, when they resign or are sacked suddenly, they're basically replaced the same day. Sometimes if the exit is very sudden and there's a lot of firefighting to be done, you know, it might be the next day. Zahawi was dismissed over a week ago, and Sunak had plenty of warning. It was clear that Sunak was going to need a new party chair for at least the week before that, and probably two, if we're honest. Yes, it's taken this long to find a replacement. There were reports that people were being offered it and turned it down. Now, right enough, the position is a bit of a poison chalice in some ways. The position of party chair carries with it quite a few responsibilities, but two of the more notable ones right now are coordinating the efforts to raise donations for the party and coordinating the local election campaign. Those are the two biggest issues in their in tray. The Conservatives are losing donations at the moment. They're really struggling. And nobody believes they're going to avoid shattering losses at the local elections this May. So whoever was going to take on the role was going to face a monumental challenge, and it wasn't exactly going to be anything to boast about at the end of their stint. But I would also suggest that unless they made a complete pig's ear out of their efforts, nobody would really blame them. You know, because everyone would sort of understand they'd be struggling against all the odds, and of course they're not going to come up smelling of roses. Nobody would blame the party chair for a bad set of local election results when the writing on the wall has been there since two prime ministers ago. You know, last year, when we were looking at the local elections last year, I was saying, you wait till the 2023 ones. Those are the ones where the Tories are going to lose heavily. We knew about this at the time. Very little that any leader could do. You know, and also nobody would really would blame them for struggling to attract donations when everyone knows the reason is largely because most of their donors are people who want a financial return. It's corrupt. And this is not going to happen if, as expected, the Tories lose power at the next election. And also, they've been losing some honest donations as well. They're not all corrupt. Some of them are honest, from people who just think, do you know what? A Tory government's better for my business, so I would like a Tory government. I will donate to them. Fine, fair enough. They don't expect any public contracts for it or anything like that. They just want a Tory government. Well, they've been losing some of that as well, as lots of people have looked at it and think, yeah, this government's no good for my business at all. We'd be better off with Labour. So I would still say I find it surprising that Sunak couldn't find anyone because nobody would judge them harshly for taking on such a role at such a time. In fact, they'd actually look like it was all hands to the pump and they were doing their best for the party. They could come out of it with some credit. It suggests a malaise within the party, an acceptance that there's very little to fight for now, so why go through the effort? But given how long it took to do it, and when he did, he appointed Greg Hands. You may not have heard of him. It's going to invite questions about whether he can really attract the big players into his government. Greg Hands, now, fair enough, he's been a junior minister in a number of departments for a very long time on and off, but he's never really broken through. He became an MP while Labour was still in power. He's had plenty of time to rise, the ranks. Do you really want to entrust the job of party chair? Now, it's nothing to do with us, by the way, as members of the public. It's purely a matter for the Conservatives who chairs their party. But if you were in the party, would you really want someone responsible for gathering donations for your election war chest, organising the crucial local election strategy? Would you really want that to fall to someone who failed to convince 4 previous Tory Prime Ministers to give him a cabinet position? I mean, bear in mind, Chris Grayling was a cabinet minister for a while. That is the bar that Hands was considered below. I mean, I could say Nadine Dorries as well, but, she was brought in for blind loyalty, so I won't go there. And if Sunak's appointment of Hands to party chair smacks of having to take the very bottom of his list of potential candidates, what on earth is going on with Lee Anderson as deputy chair? That was the funniest thing I saw in the news today, and I saw a couple of things. What does it say about Sunak's long-term vision for the party that he appoints to such a position an MP who is definitely not going to be an MP the day after the next general election? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.